Hello and welcome to tonight's Wealth Builders Real Estate webinar. I am Karen Conrad Metcalf and I'm so glad that you joined us. And I think you are going to be so glad that you joined us tonight too. This is going to be an amazing webinar. We were just chatting before we went live. And those of you that are in the coaching program, you heard me talk about this on Tuesday, but I'm on fire with this, you guys, because I feel like ahead of us is an opportunity that the enemy's trying to get us in fear about, but actually it's an opportunity that we need to align with God in faith and seize for the wealth transfer that's ahead. And Bill and Troy are going to chat about this a little bit with us tonight too. But I just want to encourage you that if you feel called to be on this webinar and you feel called to real estate, I feel really strongly like that is like a God inspired thing, because looking at the history of what's happened, we are coming on that time, just like Billy's been talking about in the recent webinars he's done, where there's an opportunity for us that are open to it, that are knowledgeable, that are like, yes, God, we're going to go forward to really make a difference through wealth transfer in real estate. So tonight I have got two great panelists on. Bill Bronchick is going to be leading us, but I've got our coach Troy Peterson on as well. So Troy, if you want to say hi to everybody real quick, that'd be great.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here tonight. You are in for a treat to hear from Bill. He really is one of the premier experts in real estate in this nation. And I know you better be ready to take some notes because he's going to share a wealth of wisdom with you tonight.
Yes. And Bill, if you just want to greet everybody before you get started, that would be awesome.
Hello, everybody. Shalom and Happy New Year to those of my mishpacha, my Jewish Christian friends. You could see I got my chauffeur up on the shelf right up there, which we're blowing on Saturday. So this is not just, a season, it's a new year in biblical sense that you should be thinking about a new mindset.
Wow, that is so good, Bill. And those of you that have tuned in know that Bill's going to be talking about how to purchase real estate with no money down or creative financing. And I just really want to encourage you all to really open up your minds and your heart to what God has ahead. There's always a way for what He has called us to do. And guys, this is something I was sharing with our coaching clients too. I was doing a little real estate research, which I do every day. You guys do as well here in Cocoa Beach. And I was looking at a property, and I always go in, I look at the property, then I'm like, when did they buy this property and for how much? And I went in on the research. It was listed at about 800,000, and they purchased it in 2011 for under $300,000. And it really like hit me, like Billy says, if you can ride out two real estate cycles, which we've had two real estate cycles, right? That's where you really are able to see the increase and build that incredible generational wealth and bring transformation through that, right? That's why we do this. And it really hit me that we are about to enter that season or that opportunity here in the next few months. And even though prices are higher than they were in 2011, the people in 2011, instead of being in fear, that actually went out and had the knowledge that we're going to be sharing with you to purchase real estate, are the ones that bought, right, 12 years ago under $300,000, and they are selling today for 800,000. So I know that it shifted as far as the value of properties, but I truly believe that we are about headed into that same opportunity. And I want to encourage you, just like I'm just so passionate about this, and I don't usually get like, oh, you got to hear this, but you really need to hear this. I think this is the time that we are called, and you need to be equipped with knowledge and information. So this real estate workshop that's coming up with Wealth Builders is perfect timing to get positioned for this. It's October 13th through the 15th, and we have a special code for you tonight. If you've not yet registered, I encourage you, get registered. There is something happening and something ahead that we need to be prepared for. And you can use the code WB200 go to wealthbuilders.org/events. I know the team will put that up there, and we just want to get you equipped and really prepare you with knowledge, understanding, and wisdom to take advantage of this time. So, all right, before we get started, I would love to hear where everybody is tuning in from. And some of you are, oh, this is so cute. All right, Bill, Marva McJoy says, Shalom, Happy New Year. I'm sure I'm not saying this right, but Lashana Tova.
Shana Tova, thank you.
There we go. And I'm so glad. Oh, the Laffertys are tuning in from San Antonio. Great friends, coaching clients. We're so blessed to have you. Xenia is coming in from Oregon. Hello. We've got Nana from Texas. We've got Martha from San Jose. Wow, it's going fast now. Karen from Arkansas. Don from Colorado Springs. Bernadette from Avon. This is like a speed round. Nancy, hello. We've got Judy from Orlando. Oh, my husband, Dave from South Lake. Hello, Dave. So glad you are on. We've got Tally from FSM. So I'm not from Cosray FSM. I'm not sure where that is, but it sounds like it's from another country. Jojo from Romania. Jojo, that's amazing. We have Jeff and Melissa from Orlando. Deb, hello from Reading. We are so blessed to have you. We've got West Palm tuning in. Solange from Colorado Springs. Wow, we've got Dale from the Seattle area. Hello, Dale. So glad to have you on. I just love this. You know, when we tune in like this and you can see each other. We've got Henry, first time here from Nashville. Welcome. This really, Connie from Minnesota, my home state. I was just there at my nephew's wedding. So good to see you. Okay, so explained it. Cosray, Federated States of Micronesia. All right, so we are so glad to have you. But this is what it's all about. You know, like Becky says, we are a family, okay? And so when all of you tune in like this, I just want you to know we really see you as part of our family, and we want you to connect with each other. So this is great. Hello, Mike from Ormond Beach, Florida. Oh my goodness, that's one of the areas that we've been scoping out in coaching, right, Troy?
Yes.
All right, so just a reminder that this is an interactive webinar. So what we mean by that is we're going to take as many questions as possible and answer those for you. So if you're on Zoom, go ahead and enter that question in the chat section. If you're joining us tonight on Facebook, enter your question in the comment section. And between Bill and Troy and I, we will answer as many of those as possible. All right, Bill, we are all excited to hear about this. And I'm so excited to hear about the possibilities, but also your take on the market. So everybody, here's Bill Bronchick.
Thank you very much. And welcome, everybody. Those of you who have heard me talk before and those of you who have not, I wanted to welcome you as well, who may have never seen me speak or been on one of these webinars. Tonight, we are going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is creative real estate financing, which is how to buy super bargain properties without banks, without using your credit, and with little or no money down, which is very, very desirable in today's current environment. Let's take a little bit of a look back before we go forward and see where things have moved and where they are currently moving. So between 2014, about 2013, depending on which market you're in, to 2020, we had low inventory. That means fewer number of homes for sale and low interest rates. So real estate is about supply and demand. And what drives demand is locally is people moving in versus people moving out in a particular city or neighborhood. And then nationally, it would be interest rates. When interest rates are low, more people are into buying. And as interest rates have risen, it has driven a lot of people out of buying. But however, inventory, which is the number of homes for sale, remains extremely, extremely low in almost every single market in the country. And then we had, and I thought 2019 was pretty much going to be it. I was saying in 2019 is the end of this, long-term boom. I bought a lot of properties in 2009, 10, and 11. People thought I was crazy, but those things have quadrupled, and in some cases even more than that since then. And then in 2020, we had the COVID shutdown, which happened for the better part of a year. And most people, including myself, thought, well, it's all over from here, right? Well, what happened was, due to the same factors, low inventory and high demand and low interest rates, we had this sort of rubber band effect where we had all these buyers sitting waiting to buy, and they couldn't during the COVID period, or they weren't willing to look during that period. And then we had the rebound. So in early 2021 and all the way through the end of 2021, we had this huge spike in prices. And that happened as much as 20-30%, depending on what market you were in. And then what happened was, in early 2022, sellers, seeing what happened the previous year, which was a mistake because that was artificial. That boom from the previous year was for pent-up demand from the COVID era. They assumed they would get another 20% or more jump, and they marked their prices up accordingly, and they didn't get it. And then a couple of months later, we had these interest rate spikes, and that drove out demand. So no more overbidding, bidding wars. People lined up to buy properties within hours. And so we had, all of a sudden, the inventory rose because these marked properties are sitting because sellers were dropping their prices, but they weren't dropping them enough to meet the decreasing demand from higher interest rates. But in most cases, sellers who marked their properties up, like Karen said, maybe someone who bought it in 2011 for $300, and their neighbor's house went for $650 the year before, so they thought they can get $750, and they dropped it to $700. They dropped it to $675, and they said, "Well, I'm not dropping it anymore." And they just withdrew their listings, and now inventory has dropped again substantially. A lot of sellers are waiting on the sidelines for interest rates to drop or something else to happen to make more demand, meaning more buyers who are willing to buy, thus they can get more for their property. And most people are sitting on low interest rate loans, so they're either just living there and making low payments, or they're just renting them out because they have low payments. So now we have a softening of the market. Prices have flattened in most markets, and when I say markets, you have to understand that real estate and housing is not really a market in and of itself. There's a gold market, there's an oil market, it's the same everywhere, but real estate is all local, and not just state by state, but city by city, and within a city, neighborhood by neighborhood. So you might have within one city a neighborhood going up, a neighborhood going down, and a neighborhood staying flat. It all depends on where you are buying and what price range you are buying and age of home, etc. But there definitely has been a softening, and a lot of sellers are dropping their prices who need to sell. These are the people who don't have to, who can sit along the sidelines, who bought in 2011 and have plenty of equity. I'm talking about people who bought 3 years ago and don't have a ton of equity, and maybe they need to move, they're getting a divorce, there's a death in the family, an illness, a job loss, a foreclosure, whatever it is, and those people are dropping prices. So there are deals opening up for buyers, and that's why I think that window of opportunity for us is here now. And the drop in inventory is what's causing prices to remain relatively stable nationwide. Things have gone up very slightly. Now, some would argue that prices have really gone down because with inflation, which they say is now 3.7%, but nobody really believes that. If we say, let's say that the real inflation rate is 8% and prices remained the same from last year, that means they really went down 8%. So nominal prices have flattened, but if you look at the inflation factor, they may really have gone down, especially with the interest rate factor payments going up. And because of inflation and a slowing economy, people are unable to make their loan payments, causing a substantially rising number of loan defaults. So the opportunity for you in this market is to educate sellers on how to get their houses sold quickly and for top dollar, which was what every seller wants. Okay, now we can't help every seller. Not every seller is going to go for what I'm going to teach you tonight. It's got to be what we call a motivated seller, someone who needs to sell, not wants to, needs to sell, and needs to sell quickly. Most sellers who are listing for sale, they want full price, they want all the equity out in cash so they can buy another house. We can't work with people like that. We're talking about people who don't need all their money out, who maybe don't have a lot of equity, who must sell because they can't afford to make their payment. Those are the people who are motivated. And a lot of times, if we don't help them, they're going to go under. I mean, they're going to get foreclosed. So that's bad for them. That's bad for the bank. That's bad for everybody. So if we can help them from a no-win situation into a win-win situation where they're better off, we make money, and the lender's happy, it's a win-win-win all around. Okay, so we got to find what we call riches in the niches. You may have heard that expression before. And the niches that I'm going to talk about tonight are the creative financing. Now, leverage is the key to wealth in real estate. Some people who are watching might be sitting on a lot of cash. And you can buy houses that way. And with borrowing interest rates at 7.5 for owner occupants, over 8 for investors, you might be inclined to say, well, I'm just going to buy some houses cash because it's too expensive to borrow. Well, let's look at that. Let's say you bought a house for $100,000 cash. And I know that doesn't exist in most of your markets, but I'm using round numbers so you can follow my math easily. And then after a year or so, you sold it for 110, which means you made a $10,000 profit. That's a 10% return. So 10,000 divided by 100,000 is 0.10 or 10%. Let's look at the same scenario. And let's say you had 4 properties to buy with that 100,000, and you put 25% or 25,000 down on 400,000 or so houses, and then borrowed 75%, leveraging the rest of the purchase price. And let's say you rented for, just break even. It's going to be hard to cash flow in a lot of markets with today's interest rates, but I have a solution. But for the argument's sake, let's just say you break even for a year with this formula. After a year, if you sold each one for 110, and of course I'm excluding broker's fees to make a point, but if you sold 4 properties for 110 each, that's 440. That's a $40,000 profit, and that's 40,000 on 100 is a 40% return. And that's, so if you follow the leverage here, that's the way to get wealth. Okay, buying houses cash, and I mean, if you have a lot of cash, will produce cash flow. But if you want to produce wealth, true wealth, you have to leverage. You have to go wide. You have to buy more properties. Okay, instead of fewer properties free and clear, buying more properties with leverage. It's the path of least resistance. You could save your way to $1 million to a 1% CD, although my bank is now offering a 3% CD, but same point, inflation is more than 3%, so you can't save your way to wealth. Or path B is you borrow $1 million and you buy some real estate with it, and you let your tenants pay it back. And that's the fastest way from point A to point B. Okay, so but the limits of bank financing in this market are, number one, you're going to run out of cash. You have to put 20 or 25% down on properties to borrow. So eventually you're going to run out of that down payment. You will also run out of credit. There's only so many loans they're going to give you, and you're going to run out of the number of available loans because most of the lenders' guidelines will only give you maybe 4 or 5. Some will give you up to 6 or 7 loans. But if you want to buy 20 properties, for example, in the next couple of years, which is very doable, then you're going to run out of the ability to get loans. And also interest rates are just too high. It worked 4 years ago when interest rates were low, that you could put 25% or 20% down and have positive cash flow in most markets. Now there's very few markets where you could still do that at today's interest rates. So let's do the math on that. Let's say you bought a house for 400,000 and you put down 20%, which is 100, right? And you get a $300,000 loan at 8% interest. Your payment is $2,200 a month. Now, you're going to have taxes, insurance, repairs, vacancy. And conservatively, let's say that's $800 a month. I'm doing that 800 even to make the math easy. So your total expenses a month, principal, interest, property taxes, insurance, vacancy, repairs, etc., $3,000 a month. That house in most markets will only rent for $2,500. It's not going to rent for $4,000. So you're only losing $500 a month. Only losing. That does not work. And you can't make that up in volume, by the way, in most markets. You don't want to be buying properties and losing money. It's not a good strategy. Okay. So, however, 62% of existing mortgages are under 4%. 25, 1 in 4 are under 3%. Most people who have 7 and 8% loans, we're only talking about less than 10% of the loans out there. Less than 10%. And get this one, 41% of people own their homes with no mortgage, free and clear. And that's a high. That's an all-time high that we haven't seen in many, many years, which is going to work for some of the strategies we'll talk about. So if we could leverage what's out there instead of getting new loans using creative financing, we can make a lot of money in real estate. Okay. So if we did that same example, $300,000 at 3% interest is only $1,200 a month versus $2,200 a month, turning a $500 negative into a $500 a month positive, or $6,000 a year positive. Very, very good. So the problem is, how do you buy lots of properties without the bank financing? And the solution is to fire your bank, and we're going to use creative financing techniques. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't, or maybe some of you have gone out and put down 20 or 30% and borrowed from a bank. Some people are putting down more now. They're putting 50% down, so they'll have more cash flow because they'll have less of a loan. But your return on investment goes way down when you do that, as I will show you here tonight. So there's 3 specific strategies, and I have so many more that we'll talk about at the workshop on October 13th through 15th. 3 strategies I want to talk about is, one is called a lease with option. Some of you may have heard of that, sometimes called a rent to own, a seller carryback, and what we call OPM. OPM. Many of you have heard that expression before. So a lease option is 2 things. It's a lease agreement, a rental agreement, plus an option to purchase that gives you a lease with option. Now, lease is the right to live there. And if you have a right to live there and there's nothing prohibiting you from subletting, you could sublet to someone else for more money every month and make monthly cash flow. So lease from an owner, have the right to sublet and make cash flow. I have a lot of clients and students that I've coached that instead of buying houses for Airbnb are just leasing them. They go to a seller who's got a landlord, who's got a property for rent for, let's say, $2,500 a month, and say, give me a 5-year lease and I'll give you $3,000 a month. And then they sublet every weekend or every couple of days for Airbnb purposes. They don't even own the property. You can do that legally as long as you have that in your agreement and it doesn't prevent you from subletting. You're allowed to do that. Very profitable thing. Even better if you have the option to buy that house. So in case it goes up in value, you could turn around and buy that house and then put it into your inventory and keep it as a long-term or short-term or intermediate-term rental. All right. What you can do also is what we call a sandwich lease with option, a sandwich. So we're going to be kind of the meat sandwiched in between 2 parties. So we have here a motivated seller, owner of a property, will master lease it from him. And a master lease means you're not going to live in it. You're going to sublet it. And you have specifically the right under the lease to sublet it. So we lease it on a master lease below market rent and then sublet it at market rent. And this would be just an annual lease. This wouldn't be an Airbnb, just a regular annual lease agreement. So in simple math, if you rented it for $800 and market rent was $1,200 and you sublet it for $1,200, you make $400 a month. You also have the option to buy the property for a below market price. Now, you don't have to steal the property. You just have to get a decent deal on it. Let's use round math again so you follow my example. Let's say the house is objectively worth 100. And if this doesn't work in your market, just multiply times 5. If you're in rural Iowa, just divide by 2. You get the point. I'm using simple round numbers so you follow the example. So if it's worth 100 and the seller owes 85, in theory, he has 15,000 in equity, but does he really? Because if he sold the house and listed it with a real estate agent, he's going to pay 6% in commission, $6,000, closing costs. He's going to maybe have to fix things that the buyer wants on inspection and so on and so forth. So it's not that hard to get them from 100 down to 90 or maybe even 85, the balance of what they owe. Because most sellers in this situation, they're not looking for a lot out of the property. Maybe we're talking about someone who got a VA loan a few years ago where they put no money down, or an FHA where they only put 3% down. So they don't have a lot of equity. They don't expect a lot back. In that scenario, you could probably get an option to buy it for the balance of their mortgage and then lease it if they have a low interest rate payment for monthly for what their mortgage payment is. So let's say that's 800 and we have an option to buy it at 85 for 3 years. We'll sublet it at market rent of 1,200, make $400 a month, and then we'll sell it to our subtenant at some point for not 100, but tomorrow's price, because we're going to give the tenant a year or 2 or 3 to buy the property from us. Okay, no real estate agent in this picture who's going to take part of the profit. So if I have the right to buy it at 85 and I give my subtenant the right to buy it from me for 105, that's 20,000 profit. And when my subtenant says, I'm ready to buy from you, Bill, I go back to the owner and say, I'm ready to buy from you. And I exercise the option to buy at 85. And then I sell it to the subtenant for 105. In the meantime, I'm making $400 a month. Also, I'm going to get non-refundable earnest money up front from my tenant towards the purchase price of the property, usually 2, 3, 4 grand up front. Okay, so there are 3 profit centers if you follow this. One is the monthly cash flow. So if I'm renting it for 1,200 and I'm paying rent to the owner of 800, I'm making $400 a month, which is almost 5 grand a year on a property you don't even own. Do you have to own a property to make cash flow? Absolutely not. Remember here, I didn't put 20% down and qualify for a mortgage. What I did was I leased it with just first and security up front, first month rent and security. And instead of going out and getting an 8% mortgage, I'm taking advantage of the sellers. I'm leveraging the seller's 3% loan, whereas payment is only $800 a month. That is how you profit in this market. So 1,200 in, 800 out. I also get non-refundable earnest money. So I said I only give first month's rent and a security deposit to the seller, the owner. For my subtenant, it's different. I'm offering a rent to own, an exclusive opportunity to try before you buy. In that case, I'm going to get probably about 3%, 4%, maybe 5% of the $105,000 purchase price up front. So let's say I get $3,000. Now, I had to give first month's in security to the owner, but I get that first month's rent back from my subtenant as soon as I rent. I had to put up 1 month's security, which I will get back when I'm ready to buy the house and sell it to my subtenant. But I got 3 grand up front. And on the back end, I'm going to sell it to the tenant for 105 minus 85. That's the third profit center. That's 20 grand net. But I have to give the tenant credit for his 3,000 earnest money up front. So it's not 20 on the back end, but 17. So in this example, 3 up front, 400 a month, 17 in a year or 2. Not bad. No brokers involved, usually no attorneys involved, and very simple to negotiate and put together. You don't need a desperate seller. You just need one that has a decently nice house that's in good condition, maybe was listed for 6 months and didn't sell, has a very low payment on it, so you can leverage the low lease payment on your front end and then sublet it at market for some monthly cash flow. I used to do these I still do them, but this was how I got started in real estate. My first year or two, I must have done 15 of these, and they did really well for me. And they were not hard to put together, and they were not that hard to find either. The sellers were pretty easy to find. The tenant, future buyer was very easy to find. That you just put up a sign, rent to own, and your phone will ring off the hook. That's a funny expression, right? What hook? We don't have a hook anymore for a phone. Strategy number 2 is what we call a seller carryback. Now, as I said earlier, 41% of people own their homes free and clear. So we're looking for people who own homes free and clear. Who would those be? Well, first of all, you can buy a list of those. Anything that's public record is a list you can buy. When someone pays off their loan, the lender is going to release the lien from the property, and that document gets picked up in a database, and you can buy lists of owners where that document was filed recently, within the last year or two, let's say. So they don't own any mortgage on their home. It's free and clear. We're going to give them a small down. Now, how much is a small down? Well, it really depends on what you can negotiate. But remember, if I went to borrow money from a bank, I have to put at least 20% of the purchase price down. So if I can get a seller to take 10% or less, in my mind, that's low down. Anything less than 20 is low. 10 or less, I've done as little as 5. I've done as little as 0 down. In fact, I've had people pay me to buy their home. Not that often, but once in a while. I just want to see how motivated they are, how bad they want to get rid of it, to pay me money. And that was back when they used to do 120% mortgages, remember, back in about 20 years ago. So someone had refinanced it, took all the money out and then some. And I said, well, you give me some of that because I'm going to leverage your existing debt you just took out. And then the seller is going to carry the difference between the down payment and the purchase price in payments, monthly payments, like a bank. So instead of a third-party lender, the seller's the lender. You make payments on what we call a promissory note, usually with interest, but we're not going to pay 8%. We're going to negotiate 4 or maybe 3% interest rate, or maybe even less, depending on the other terms of the deal, then how much price. The seller, you want this much from your property? Sure, I'll pay that, but you have to give it to me at 2.5% interest rate. Everything is negotiable, right? So we're looking for sellers free and clear. We try to give as small down as possible and let the seller carry the payments. And the advantage here, I mean, obviously, we can get a lower interest rate than a bank. We don't have to pay junk fees to a lender. No origination points, no appraisal, no survey, no underwriting fees, and all that garbage. All you need is a title company or an attorney to close it, and those are your fees. That's it. And you're negotiating directly with a seller, so there's no agent involved. And the third strategy that we're going to talk about tonight is what we call OPM. Now, what does OPM stands for? I'm sure some of you are going to chat it into the chat there. Go ahead and do it if you know what it is, OPM. And everybody's saying the same thing. Other people's money. Close. Other people's mortgages. We're leveraging other people's mortgages. They're 3 and 4% or lower mortgages that exist out in the market already instead of getting new ones. So the way it is what we call buying the property subject to the existing mortgage. Some of you may have heard of this before. For some of you, this is new and it's going to take a minute for you to wrap your head around it, but let me try and explain it as simply as I can. The seller transfers ownership to you at closing. And how does seller transfer ownership? Well, they use a document known as a deed. Now, whether it's a warranty deed or a grant deed, that's not really relevant to our discussion, but at closing, the seller is going to sign a deed to the property conveying ownership to you. And you go down and record it at the county, and you're now the owner. But you're not going to pay off the mortgage. See, typically in a closing, if the seller has a mortgage, you're going to come in with money as the buyer, and the seller's going to use that money, or really the closer, the title company or attorney, is going to close it and use those funds to pay off the seller's mortgage so that the bank can release the lien and the seller conveys title free and clear to you as the buyer. And if the buyer is borrowing money, then there'll be a new lien in place of the old lien to the buyer's lender. Okay. But we're not going to do that. We're not going to go out and get a mortgage. We're not going to pay all cash, and we're not going to pay off the seller's loan. Now, we're not also going to assume the loan. Some loans are assumable, like VA loans. A lot of them are assumable. What does that mean? That means you call up the lender and say, may I qualify to assume liability for this loan, which is the same qualifications as getting a new loan. They have to go through your credit, your income, your assets, and so forth. And then what they'll do is they'll take the seller off the hook, and now you're the borrower on that note. That's an assumption, or a formal assumption. Okay, we're not going to do that because, first of all, the seller was probably living there, and that type of loan is not the same as an investor loan. So if you're not going to live there, then you're an investor, and for an investor to assume a homeowner owner-occupant loan, most lenders won't do that. And a lot of lenders, they are allowing assumptions, but they're jacking the interest rate up at the same time. So all you're really saving is the original fees at the beginning. And maybe if the seller's been paying on it for 4 or 5 years, you get the benefit of only having 25 years left in your loan instead of 30. So if they raise the interest rate, it doesn't work. So we're not going to assume it, but we're going to just make payments to the lender. Okay, we're going to continue making payments in place of the seller, and the lender's going to take them. The property is yours. The lender still has a lien. This is where a lot of people have trouble. They say, wait a minute. The bank owns the property, right? I don't own the property till I pay it off. That's not accurate. That's in the car world that happens. The bank holds the title until you pay it off. In the real estate world, the owner, the borrower, has title in his name, and the lender has a lien against the property. So to say because you owe money that the bank owns the property is not accurate. Let's look at it visually for visual people. So we have here the deed of ownership. That's the borrower who signed a note, which is debt to a lender, and the bank has a lien, which we call a mortgage. What you're going to do is take the borrower, who's now the seller, out of the equation by him transferring or her transferring title to you, and now you own it and you make payments to the lender. Now the seller is still on the hook for the loan, don't get me wrong, but as long as you pay it, everybody's happy. This may sound really unusual, but let me give you an example that happens every single day of the week. Husband and wife in a divorce, both names on the property, on the title, both names on the mortgage loan. In the settlement agreement, husband agrees to transfer his ownership, to deed his half, to wife, and wife promises to make the payments by herself for, let's say, 3 years, and then at some point she's got to refinance or sell the property and get the husband off that loan, because there's no other way to get the husband off the loan unless you pay it off. Okay, you can't call the bank and say, well, he deeded the property to me, I own it alone, so take him off. They won't do that. So first of all, that's absurdly foolish for a divorce attorney to do, because what happens if the woman does not pay the loan? The guy's out of luck because he doesn't own the property and his credit is damaged from late payments or a foreclosure, and he has no way of getting the property back. This is the same scenario. We're taking title from a seller who has no way of getting the property back if we don't pay. Now, if you don't pay it, the right thing to do is not to walk away, but to give the house back. That's the right and ethical thing to do. But you're thinking, well, what kind of knucklehead seller would do that? What did I just explain to you? In divorce, it happens every day of the week. People do this. So it's not that unusual when you think about it. Most sellers who would do this are either upside down, break even, or very little equity, already behind in payments a lot of times, so you have to make up some back payments, and or they're thinking, if I can't sell this, I'm just going to walk and let the bank foreclose it and just throw my hands up. Well, if they do that, they're ruining their credit. You're doing them a favor. You come along and put the loan back into current status by making up the back payments and make them on time going forward. You're improving their credit and you're saving them from the disaster of a foreclosure on their record. So it is a win-win, and the bank's happy. They don't want the property back, not with no equity or very little equity, and it was in default. They were going to have to foreclose it, and now it's being paid. Everybody's happy. Win, win, win all around. Okay. All right. So this is the stuff and more I'll be talking about at the workshop, October 13th through 15th. And I love this stuff because I think it's so important to learn this in today's market. You can make money in real estate even when interest rates are high. It depends on what you're seeing in the market. It's all, some people see doom and gloom, some people see opportunity. And some of you have heard this example before, but remember the 12 spies, and God told one person from each tribe to go check out the land of milk and honey, the land of Canaan, and spy in and see what they were going to do before they attacked. And 10 of the 12 spies came back and said, those people are giants. We're just grasshoppers. We can't beat them. That's what some people see the market as. But 2 of them, Joshua and Caleb, said, it's the land of milk and honey. I don't care how big they are. God is with us. Let's get them. And what happened? The people throw rocks at them. And they didn't go in, obviously, and God got very upset about that. So they spent 40 years in the desert instead of going into the land of Canaan and taking it like he promised he would help them do. So really, how do you see the market? Do you see it like Joshua and Caleb, or do you see it like the other 10? Do you see giants, high interest rates, sellers inflexible, a bad economy, hard to rent for break even, yada, 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 or do you see the land of milk and honey? So it's really up to you how you see it. There's opportunity even when there's disasters. So I think today is a wonderful opportunity, especially to apply these strategies in today's market. Karen, welcome back.
Thank you, Bill. That was amazing.
Thank you.
And we've got a lot of good questions that we'll be addressing, but I think you just hit on something too. It's like, how do you see this time? And really, if you were to study history, Bill, and Troy, you've been in this a long time too, everything that I see is that the opportunity is coming that I didn't recognize back in 2011 and even 2019, 2020.
Mhm.
Didn't recognize as much, even though we were actively investing. You just think, man, at 2 and 3%, why didn't we do more? So, Bill, I'd really like to hear from you on like what you would say to people to help them understand the actual opportunity in the times we're about to go into.
Yeah, well, we're at a sort of a pause in the market where it was going up, 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 and then it just, boom, it hit the skids and it's flat. And in some areas, it's actually going down. But really the key is not in the short-term appreciation, because we don't know if the market's going to go down or up. We know in the long term it does. Over 10 or 20 years, it's going to go up. It always does. But if you're playing the long game, the question is, can we leverage those 62% of people who have 4% loans or lower, or the 41% who are free and clear? Not the people who want full price and you got to go out and put down 20 or 30% and go borrow at 8% from a bank. That's just not feasible.
Yeah, that's great. Troy, you've been in real estate a long time. You're one of the coaches, and we've been really working with people a lot to recognize the times, find those deals. We always encourage them. You got to look at the numbers. just based on your experience, what do you see as opportunities in this market that would encourage people to like, hey, get in the game now?
Yeah, that's a great thing to consider. So, as I lead that off, I want to play off the story Bill told about the 12 spies. Joshua and Caleb saw the promise, and they were the only two that actually entered into the promise. They got to go in, the others didn't, because their viewpoint was right. They saw the opportunity, they saw the promise, and that's what we see today. I have been in real estate for about 30 years. These strategies that Bill's talking about today work wonderful in the type of market that we're in. I've seen a couple of the questions pop up. Why would a seller do this? Why would a seller do that? I once had a seller toss me keys and says, I don't want anything to do with this house. Just make the payments and it's yours. And he even said, and he pointed to his neighbor and says, that guy right there wants to buy it. And he got in his U-Haul truck and he drove away. And so I went to the next door neighbor and I sold him the house and made a nice profit on it. And just because this guy didn't want anything to do with it,
Right.
we're at the threshold of a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. It really is something you want to step in. And if you see the opportunity and the numbers work, then you definitely want to get into the deal. I wouldn't be holding back or delaying. I'd be jumping in.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's so great, Troy. Thank you so much. We're going to answer some questions. We've got a lot of great questions, guys. But just a reminder too, I've seen a little message on Facebook too. I'm trying to hop on there and respond to you all. But the code is WB200. And the team, if you would just put that link in the chat and also put the link in our Facebook comments, wealthbuilders.org/events, and then use that code. And you're just getting a taste of it. Actually, the weekend, Bill, you've called it like a crash course, right? So
Mhm.
when you come to these real estate workshops, it literally is a crash course. You have over 20 hours of teaching. And what we love about it when you come in person is we actually get to talk to you and interact with you. We keep these workshops really at a small number on purpose, because we know for you to actually go in and invest actively, you've got to be able to have some connection, not only with us, but with other people that are like-minded and they're doing the same things. We provide a lot of networking opportunities. We do speed coaching at this event, which if you're live stream, we love that, but we can't do the speed coaching with you, where you can actually sign up and you can do speed coaching with one of us coaches, ask us questions about your situation, and we answer those just to give you some good guidance. And I think that people just leave so encouraged, because they're attracted to what Billy and Becky have started here, and they're hearing that sound in the spirit that it is time for us to step into that place to build wealth, certainly for our legacy and for generations. That is a godly thing, but to really impact the kingdom. So here we go. Bill, I'm going to start with you on this.
Mhm.
This is from Donald. And he says he's just getting started and he has very little cash right now. Should I try to take a few months to build up some cash, or transfer his IRA to a
Mhm.
self-directed one and use the money from that for a down payment? What do you think about that?
That's a good question. So lease options especially are great for IRAs. So in that case, you're not borrowing out of your IRA. Your IRA is the investor. Your IRA takes the rents. Your IRA makes the profit. It's like buying and selling stock. You can buy and sell real estate. Now, the only thing about that is you can't live on that if you aren't of retirement age yet. So if you're not 59 and a half, you can't take it out yet. But if you earn it in the retirement account, you're getting an enormous return annually on your money. And then if you are over 59 and a half, you could take some of that out as you go, or just let it accumulate and take it out later for your retirement. I love doing that.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, Bill, I'm going to have you click off your PowerPoint just so people can see us in
Oh,
screen when we
yeah.
talk. And we have a lot of coaching clients that have worked with you, Bill, because
Mhm.
part of it is they get a free consultation with you to set up their LLC and family trust or whatever that is. And then you, oftentimes they'll hire you to actually get the paperwork done.
Mhm.
But I know with this that you've helped a lot of people to be able to leverage their IRA. And if I could just ask you, is this really a feasible option for people?
Oh, absolutely. I have bought and sold and continue to hold many properties in my self-directed IRA. And then that allows me to accumulate all the profits in the IRA instead of paying taxes as I go. Now, I'm not 59 and a half yet. I'm close, but I'm almost there. But I'll be able to start taking out, the rent, the monthly rents at least, or in the accumulated cash in the account. I probably won't sell the properties because that's the goose. That's the golden goose. And then I can leave that IRA to my heirs, and they can, when they reach a retirement age, or depending on how they do it, they can take advantage of the profits that are in there as well.
That's awesome. When I was in Colorado, and actually we're moving back there, which is big news for people that are close to us. We're really excited about it. But one of the guys that I worked with, he was a major flipper in Colorado Springs, still doing it today. This is how he did it. He did it through his IRA. And so this is very viable. There's some things that you step through, and we really help you through that in the coaching program too, to make sure that you know how to do it. There's guidelines to follow, but it's very viable when you think about the opportunity that you have in real estate, maybe even versus the stock market. That's like a little, right? Billy teaches a lot about, law of leverage with real estate. It's a very viable option. And when I am looking at this actually too, and the questions, I'm just going to stay on track here with Kathy. And she says, my husband will retire soon. Could he use his pension and transfer it to pay off our home or invest in real estate? What do you think about that, Bill?
I don't know if I would, if you have a 3% mortgage, I wouldn't be in a rush to pay off your home. But in terms of rolling a pension plan into a self-directed IRA and then buying real estate in that, and then you can take payments out of that, and you can use some of those to pay down your home mortgage. But I'm not a fan of rushing to pay off your home if your interest rate is low. In today's market, a 3% loan is an asset. I know it's technically a liability, but it's really an asset when market rates are almost 8.
Yeah, that's great. And we've got a question here from Donald. And he said, can he contact you directly to set up his LLC and his self-directed IRA? I know the answer to that is yes. And Bill, how can they get a hold of you?
My email is easy. I'm just Bill. See my name tag right there on the screen. It's Bill at Bronchick, LAW law.com. Bill at bronchicklaw.com.
Awesome. Okay, so here's one too. This is from Shannon. And Shannon, I got to tell you, I love this question. Shannon is tracking with you. So I'm going to read this, but it's a very specific question. This is when you were talking about, I've got a couple questions coming from that point where you were helping people to do like the sublet or the rent to own to you. Okay, so Shannon says, why wouldn't the owner rent it to the subtenant for more money if they are renting it to you as the investor tenant at a lower price?
That's a great question.
Isn't it?
And that a lot of people ask that question. It's a great question. And the simple answer is he doesn't know how. He doesn't know how. Why do people go to a dealer and trade in your car? You're getting hosed. You're supposed to advertise your car directly to the public, get cash, and then use that to buy a new car. But people all the time, for convenience, or because they don't want to deal with the hassle, or they don't have the time, or a number of reasons, will go to a dealer and trade their car in for wholesale. Why would you do such a thing?
That is such a great point. And that is what allowed, people that, all of you that are tuned in, we're willing to do what's necessary to grab hold of this opportunity. And that's really what Wealth Builders is all about. Billy talks about this. You get knowledge, understanding, and wisdom.
Yep.
But without that, just like what Bill is describing, people don't know what to do, or they don't have the willingness to do what it takes. But you and I are different because we see this opportunity, and as we learn, we're able to step through things that actually brings to us the things that God has planned for us when we set our hand to it. So Bill, that's a great answer. Okay, Shane continues with a question on this. He says, Bill, in this scenario, Who would bear the burden of repairs and maintenance?
That's an excellent question. So typically the way I set it up is anything major, the owner, the titled owner is going to pay for. So if it's a furnace, if it's a hot water heater, if it's the roof, usually roofs are insured, but I'll make sure I'm going to pick a house that I've inspected it, make sure everything's, in good condition. But minor stuff, I make the subtenant do. So if it's a screen door, if it's, a light fixture that fell down or something, I'm going to make the subtenant do it. Now, certain things as a landlord, you must do. Things like heat and plumbing and electric and, running water, they're called habitability issues. You can't delegate that to a tenant. So those the owner would have to do. And then anything that's minor, then the subtenant, I'm going to say, this is going to be your future home. So you have to start treating it as such. So don't call me up and say your screen door isn't, working properly, or or something fell off the wall, or, that's on you.
That's really good. Or change a light bulb, right?
Right. Or change a light bulb. Right.
Yeah, it's really good. Dan Dyer, who's one of the speakers, and you all
Mhm.
know him, he talks about that. I mean, he really thrives in this area of
Mhm.
this rent to own
Mhm.
and is really good, just like you're describing, Bill, about like, hey, this is what it takes to be a homeowner, right?
Right.
So we can start helping you with this, but it's like
Right.
a nice middle step for people
Right.
to really pursue that home ownership. And that really is the key, like the first step to attaining wealth. Okay, here we go. Another question is from Joshua, a little bit on this same line. He says, Bill, do you still get home inspections on these types of purchase options when you are buying or assuming loans to ensure that there are no major issues with the home?
Always. Absolutely always.
All right, awesome. Troy, I know you live in this world a lot too. Do you have anything that you might encourage people with in this, in this space as far as the buy to own, the inspections, how to, balance the two?
It is always good to get an inspection, exactly as Bill says. You want to know exactly what you're getting into. I look at an inspection as an insurance policy. If I spend a few $100s for an inspection and it saves me $10,000 or $20,000 in repairs, then it was money well spent to get that inspection. That way I know exactly what I'm getting into. And if you're really not sure about the property, if you're really not sure what you're jumping into in this market, then you really need to beef up on the education. You need to be ready to jump in. It's just like the question that Bill answered a little bit ago. Why wouldn't the owners rent it to the subtenant themselves? Is because they don't know how. And a lot of us in this market, if you don't know how, then you want to jump in and learn. And when you've got people like Karen and Bill and Billy and everybody at Wealth Builders to be able to share that information with you, then you want to be able to glean everything you can so that you can get that knowledge, you can get that wisdom, and you can practice these strategies that Bill talks about. And then once you understand them clearly, you're not going to be asking, why would the seller do that? They're just going to know that and they're going to trust you to get it done, and you're going to make the deal and make the profit. That's what it's all about.
That's so good. This is a question from Solange. It's really good. And Bill, he's asking, can one use life insurance? Is that a possibility for getting into real estate
Yes.
as leverage?
Yes. You can borrow against the cash value in your policy. It's a kind of a neat little trick where you can borrow against the cash value and then pay your policy back interest tax free. So it's like your little bank account, your little piggy bank.
Mhm. Wow, that's awesome. Henry's wondering, are there some states where the options you described, number 2 and number 3, cannot legally work? And are there any restrictions based on the type of loan that they have in option 2?
I think he's thinking about option 3 on the type of loan. Certain types of loans, you cannot take over OPM because the lender will require that you pay it off as soon as you transfer it. Most of the bigger lenders, your FHA, VA, conventional loans, they really don't care. But a small local commercial bank, a credit union, might make us think about that. In terms of 2 and 3, that works everywhere. Actually, number 1, you can't do in Texas. Number 1, you can't do rent to owns in Texas. It's the only state you can't do that.
All right, that's great to know. Phyllis is wondering, how do you find these sellers that might go for an OPM?
Well, believe it or not, I have my phone ringing off the hook with real estate brokers wanting to do these deals because they have sellers who are motivated, and some buyer presented it or they heard about it from, like one of my webinars or something, and they want to know how they can teach their client this as an option. So it's becoming more and more mainstream, believe it or not. But usually a seller like that, they don't have a lot of equity, and or they're not current on payments, and they want out. So if they've got a 3% or 2%, 2.8% loan, and there's no equity or even upside down, who cares? Because they can't list it with an agent. There's no room for a commission if they're upside down on, meaning they owe more than it's worth. If we could rent it out for more than the payment, that's all that matters, because eventually it'll go up in value and then the loan will pay down and you'll have equity.
Wow, that's awesome. Xenia says, how do you come up with the amount to give to the seller?
Everything is negotiable.
That's the lawyer answer, right?
Yeah, and they say except for death and
taxes.
Except for death and taxes, death is non-negotiable. Taxes are negotiable.
Oh, that's so good.
Good.
Wow, we're like really out of time, but I'm going to just throw one more your way. And then also I want to remind all of you, like two good things. First of all, we've got the Wealth Builders podcast that is every Thursday, and you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere. And we are in a real estate series. As a matter of fact, Bill, I think you and I are recording something on Friday, if I was looking at my schedule. And we just recorded, Frank and Troy and Mike and I recorded like a Q&A from people. So that's a great way for you to stay in tune. But the best way really is come to this workshop and come in person so we can connect with you. This is the time to learn. And again, you can go to wealthbuilders.org/events. Use the code WB200. We also have a young entrepreneurs, young investors group. So if you've got kids, grandkids, or maybe you are 35 and under, this is for you. Bill and Becky spend time with you, and we're really wanting to invest in the next generation. You can connect with like-minded people. I'm actually with Levi and Carly right now. They do our real estate here in Florida, and they are a big part of that. And, they're connecting with young people and encouraging people to go forth. And like, this is our future, right? And the opportunity is now. So one more question here before we sign off. Louise says this: Bill said he got 15 properties per year when he started. Sometimes it's hard to know where to start and just get to number one. Any tips for how to get started?
Well, first you have to know the strategy. Second, you have to know your local market. And number three, you have to know the players. So and you don't have to know everything before you make your first offer. You just got to know what's a deal and how to negotiate that deal. And obviously, you can always hire someone to get you from contract to closing. You just got to know what's a deal and how to find these motivated sellers and negotiate. All the little pieces in between, there are lawyers and real estate agents and coaches and people who can help you with those things. Right. So if the first step is really in between the ears. You have to believe that you can do it. You have to have the confidence. And by the more you learn, the more confidence you have that you won't, get into something. But there's always going to be a little question mark in your head, and you have to have faith that you can pull this off. Nothing is without risk, and you're never going to know everything there is to know. And you don't need to know everything. You could leverage other people's experience.
That's so good. Bill, you just tied into something. I've been listening to Kenneth Hagin Sr. recently a lot. And I just was really drawn to like go back to those roots and listen. And he said something. He said, a lot of people will say, I don't have as much faith as you, and I don't know how I can get that faith, right? And he said, well, it's easy. Faith is getting knowledge.
Yeah.
Because he said, if you have knowledge of the word of God, you will have faith.
Right.
And it's like a principle. And so really, like, how can you totally trust in something or go forward with confidence if you don't invest in getting the knowledge, the understanding, and the wisdom? Which is why we do these workshops and why we do coaching, right? It's because you need to be surrounded with people that have been there and listen to this, and it will generate faith in you to move forward. It will move fear out in faith, but it's knowledge.
Right.
And I just thought that was really, really powerful and really applicable to what we're talking about.
And the more faith you have in God, the more God will bring people into your life that will give you that knowledge, give you that information, give you that support, and give you that wisdom that you're going to need to get things done. That people just magically show up. Isn't that great?
It's something Billy always says, let me think to say this right. The teacher shows up when the student is ready.
Yes.
Right?
Amen.
All right. Gosh, this has been just amazing. I really feel like we could go a long time more. We do have more free webinars coming. And just a reminder, like next week, we're intense on real estate. Like I said, we are passionate about helping you see the opportunity. So we're going live every day at 3 p.m. Mountain. And so you can go to Billy Epperhart's Facebook page, Wealth Builders Facebook page. You're going to see us. The coaches are going to be on, and we're going to give you some great information. We actually have boots on the ground here in Florida, right, Troy? Next Thursday and Friday with our advanced coaching students. You'll get to see some of them. We're actually going and viewing a lot of our properties, some of your properties. They're researching things in the market. So if you really are saying, Karen, I want to get in this, I want to learn, the best way to go is to sign up for our Wealth Builders coaching program. A lot of people out there they charge $50,000 for this. We are a fraction of that. And let me tell you, we are only doing this to help you to advance in what God's called you to do in real estate. So to learn more about that, go to wealthbuilders.org, click on coaching, and you can actually register to have a 30-minute free consultation with us as coaches. So those of you that are like, I need to get in this, that is the way to go. We are all a part of that. So I just want to give you guys an opportunity for some final words. Troy, I'll start with you.
I don't know how to wrap that up, Karen. You did such a great job closing it out. Call to action. I always love listening to Bill. He's just a wealth of information. I ran across him 20 years ago, read his books. He's been very influential in my investing career, and it's such a pleasure to be able to work with him and the entire Wealth Builders team. For us, it really is a calling. It's nothing more than like what Karen said. We're here to empower you to fulfill your promise and your purpose in God.
Amen. Bill?
Yeah, I can. Well, thank you very much for those kind words, Troy. And Karen, you did a wonderful job of summing it up, that you want to be there and you want to be there live for the speed coaching, for the networking, but for the environment and just for the Spirit of God that is there at these events, that'll bring you the wisdom that you need and the understanding to take your first step. Once you get that first deal done, it all comes together. It just bang, 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 bang. It just happens. But if you can get the faith and the confidence and the wisdom you need to do your first deal, like dominoes, it all falls.
Oh, it really does. All right. Well, thank you so much, all of you, for tuning in. We love and appreciate you. Billy and Becky send their love, and they would love to see you at the real estate event. Again, it's October 13th through the 15th. Use the code WB200. You'll get $200 off. And we're just so excited to be on this journey with you. Join us next week every day. Like I said, we'll be coming live from Florida on Thursday and Friday, maybe Wednesday, actually, Troy, because that's when we're first down here. You'll get to see some of our advanced coaching clients, some of the properties. We're going to try to go live from some of the places we're looking, and we are just very excited to be coming alongside you to fulfill the call that God has on your life for building generational wealth and transforming the world around you. God bless you. Thanks, guys. Have an amazing rest of the night. Bye-bye.
Good night.